to 270 electoral votes is being watched by millions across the country. A tight race right now between President-elect Donald Trump and his challenger, Joe Biden.
Tonight, several states have already declared who they want to lead the country. WDRB's Chad Mills shows us current results in the states that we're still waiting to hear from. Chad?
Well, guys, this may come as no surprise, but the race is shaping up to be tighter than some of the polls would have suggested. Let's look at the board right here. Let's go over the electoral tally. First of all, you see President Donald Trump with 92 electoral votes, Joe Biden with 131. That doesn't really tell the story of what's happening in the battlegrounds right now, though. That accounts for most of the safe states that are the bolder colors here on this map. But let's dive right into the battleground states. No better place to start than the state of Florida, always a battleground. At the beginning of the night, it would have been a light shade of blue with some of the tentative votes in. Joe Biden performing pretty well here in the Tampa, St. Petersburg area, but underperforming down in Miami-Dade County. And then votes started coming in from the rural areas in many other parts of the state. Now Donald Trump leading in the state of Florida. Let's look at the number right now. With 91% of the vote in, he is up by 4 points. That has been pretty consistent. Georgia, let's look at Georgia real quick. Not a whole lot to talk about there. 53% of the vote in, so still some ground to cover. Some votes in metro Atlanta area still need to be counted as well, but Donald Trump holding a lead in Georgia as well. I think one of the interesting states to watch right now that's really coming down to the wire is the Tar Heel state, North Carolina. Let's look. 87% of the vote in right now. Joe Biden did have a 2-point lead there in North Carolina, doing well in some of the areas around the Research Triangle, around Charlotte, but that lead has started to shrink as some of the more rural areas have continued to report votes, those areas favoring Donald Trump. Let's move over to Ohio, another state where a lot of results are coming in. They came in pretty quickly, 75% of the votes in right now. Donald Trump leading by 3 points there. Now, there are some votes from Cleveland area yet to be counted. That makes up for a large amount of the votes overall in Ohio, but Donald Trump up there in Ohio right now as well. And we'll go down to Texas, which was thought to be a state that the Democrats might flip this time. Looking at Texas right now, with 68% of the vote in, Donald Trump up by 2 points, but still pretty narrow there in Texas right now. And we'll take a quick look over at Wisconsin, where, according to this, Donald Trump is up here in Wisconsin, but just 35% of the vote in there right now. In Michigan, Donald Trump doing pretty well there in Michigan so far, with 30% of the vote in, up by 13%. But looking at a more detailed map, you can see that some of the more urban areas in Michigan have yet to report the majority of their votes. So we are continuing to look at this map. We will also monitor Arizona out here out west in the Sun Belt. Could be another pivotal state in this election tonight. We will stay here in Studio B monitoring things as they unfold here on this map and send things back to you guys in A.
All right, Chad, thank you for the update. Kentucky will hold its position of power in the U.S. Senate as Majority Leader Mitch McConnell holds off Amy McGrath to win his 7th term. You can see the results right here at the bottom of your screen. They are still coming in. WDRB's Lawrence Smith tells us what McConnell had to say about his victory in downtown Louisville tonight. Lawrence.
Well, not a victory party here at the Omni Hotel because of COVID-19, but a victory speech by Senator Mitch McConnell, accompanied by his wife, U.S. Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao. McConnell congratulating Amy McGrath for running a strong race, but says he's humble and grateful to be returning to Washington for a 7th term. And he says Kentuckians sent a very strong message.
The people of Kentucky had a clear choice, and they sent a clear message. Tonight, Kentuckians said that challenging times need proven leadership. And our nation will need Kentucky values and Kentucky ideas to defeat this virus and regain our footing.
Question now is whether McConnell will remain the majority leader and which president he'll deal with. Regardless, McConnell says he's urging Kentuckians, or urging the nation, to come together and fight the problems it faces, and says Kentucky will have a seat at the table. In downtown Louisville, Lawrence Smith, WDRB News.
Lawrence, thank you. It will be 4 more years for Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb after voters gave him a big win tonight over Democrat Woodrow Myers and Libertarian Donald Rainwater. Right now, Holcomb has 58% of the vote and just gave his victory speech in the last 20 minutes. You may have seen it right before we came on air. Let's turn to WDRB's Chris Suter in our election center to break down what he had to say and how the state voted. Chris?
Well, Gilbert, he said that he wanted to thank his opponent, Woody Myers, for a spirited race. He also thanked his wife as we were watching that live here on WDRB. Let's break down the numbers, shall we? This is a look at the way Indiana has voted so far for the precincts that are reporting numbers so far, right? So South Bend up north is red at this point, and Indianapolis, another major metropolitan area in Indiana, has gone blue. You can see Lake County here near the Chicago. This is pretty much a Chicago suburb, real close to the city, and then Evansville also voted blue. But as we get closer here to home, I want to talk about the counties that you live in, the counties where you voted. Let's go here to Harrison County real quick. And you can see here that 54% of precincts are reporting and that Eric Holcomb is leading by 39 points in that county. Want to scroll over, Floyd County still isn't reporting yet. We're not sure if there's some kind of issue going on there in Floyd County. We're going to check on that as the night goes on. Let's go over to Clark County, though, right now. You can see 96% of precincts are reporting. They also voted for Eric Holcomb. He leads by 27 points there in Clark County. Let's go north right now to Scott County as well. As you can see here, 100% of precincts are reporting Eric Holcomb leads by 38 points. None of this is really a surprise. Eric Holcomb was the front runner in this race for the weeks leading up to the election. We also heard from him in several debates where his opponents tried to poke holes in his strategy toward COVID-19. Some of that just didn't stick with Indiana voters. It is clear Eric Holcomb will have 4 more years at the governor's mansion. Guys, back over to you.
All right, Chris, thank you. Indiana elected a new attorney general tonight, but that race took a very 2020 turn today.
Republican Todd Rokita beat Democrat Jonathan Weinzapfel tonight to become Indiana's 44th attorney general. Just hours earlier, his campaign announced that Rokita tested positive for COVID-19. While he does have some symptoms, his team says he is doing well and is working from home. Another interesting tidbit about Rokita: in 2002, he was elected the Secretary of State at age 32 to become the youngest Secretary of State in the United States at the time.
Louisville election results were delayed tonight because of votes that can't even be counted. Election officials say the JCPS tax hike on the ballot slowed the results tallies. Remember, a judge threw out the tax question last week, saying there were not enough valid signatures to force a vote. The Jefferson County Clerk's office says redacting that information from each voting machine caused some delays tonight.
They could not be counted with today's numbers. It was just that simple. We had to be redacted with each one of the locations and each of the memory sticks from the scanners that we have, as well as the ones that we voted for the last 3 weeks.
Now, as of really just a few minutes ago, the clerk's office says all vote centers have tabulated their votes. The only ballots not counted yet are absentees that were postmarked for today that haven't yet made it to the election center, or ones left in a drop box today. But what about that tax hike with the question being pulled off the ballot? Later, WDRB's Sarah Sider explains what happens to those votes and what's next for property taxes. Well, one thing all voters can agree on: we have never seen an election year quite like this. Absentee ballots, early voting, and more polling places today.
WDRB's Joel Skipper joins us live from downtown Louisville to tell us if there were any issues in Jefferson County. Joel, how'd it go?
Well, Gil and Fallon, it can pretty much be summed up in 2 words: very smoothly. From when the polls opened up at 6 a.m., from when they closed at 6 p.m., really no major issues to report. From Nelson to Meade, clerks and election supervisors tell me no major lines. There was also a continuous flow of people throughout the day. There were about 10 voting machines in each of the Jefferson County locations. No problems there. Everyone inside had their masks on. The stations were constantly disinfected. And we caught up with voters in Jefferson and Bullitt counties to ask about how today went for them.
The crowds were great. They had everything spaced out enough. No one was on top of each other. You didn't feel like people were too close together, and everybody had a mask on. So all safety precautions were taken.
Want to do something like this again, this format?
Absolutely.
I've seen none. Nobody that I've encountered in the 3 sites here in Bullitt County have had any problem getting their vote.
And Attorney General Daniel Cameron said there were more than 80 complaints to the election fraud hotline, mostly complaints about names being misspelled or people not having the correct ID. That's compared to 284 complaints. That was back in 2016. Now, I did speak with the supervisor of elections office for Jefferson County, and he said from the time that people showed up to the time they left was about 10 minutes. Reporting live downtown, Joel Skipper, WDRB News.
Joel, thank you. And there are so many more races we're covering. You can find the latest results on all of them the moment we do. Just go to WDRB.com and click on the WDRB election results banner at the top of the website. You can see up-to-the-minute results on races across Kentuckiana. You can also track the presidential race, U.S. Senate races, and House races.
Our election coverage is just beginning.
In about 3 minutes, we're going to talk with Kentucky's Secretary of State to see how things went today across Kentucky and if there are any lessons he learned from tonight. And as we head to break, here's a look at the results in Louisville's Metro Council races. Kentucky's Republican Secretary of State came to a bipartisan agreement with Democratic Governor Andy Beshear on how the general election would be handled in Kentucky.
Michael Adams even took some backlash from his own party and received some threats because of it. He is joining us now live. Secretary Adams, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Give us kind of a synopsis of how the night went across Kentucky. Any problems or irregularities? Any regret for that agreement that you made?
No, I think that the wisdom of that agreement has been proven tonight. You saw a really successful election as well as our primary went. We were the envy of the United States in our primary. Our election today went even more smoothly than what we had in June. I'm really proud of that.
There's been a lot of talk this year about voter fraud, people's votes not counting, the dumping of some ballots in Jefferson County. Can you assure everyone out there that if they casted a ballot in Kentucky, it was or will be counted?
Well, sure. We've got great provisions in place. We've got, for the very first time in our history, a cure process that requires the voters and let them know there's an issue with their ballot. It's the first time we've ever had the ability to electronically track ballots, not just for us to do it, but for the voter to do it online 24 hours a day. And so we've never had so much transparency in our election system. And we have a lot of things that we added this year that we should make permanent.
And what about those ballots still out there in Kentucky? They had to be postmarked by 6 p.m. today and must be received in their election center by Friday. Have you had any communication with the Postal Service, and are you confident all the ballots will get there in time?
Well, I can't speak to every ballot that was mailed today. I can tell you this: we allowed for 3 mail days for those to arrive. But more important than this, we did a good job, I think, messaging to voters to get their ballots back quickly. We're way ahead of the rest of the country. Most of the country is only at 80% of their absentee ballots returned. We're at 90%. And we've still got 3 days for ballots to come in. The governor also deserves credit. He and I both have been on the same page, encouraging voters to either mail the ballots back promptly or put them in the drop boxes promptly. And so we're already at 90%. That's how we've been able to have so many votes reported tonight.
And what are your thoughts on what we're seeing nationally in places like Pennsylvania, where there are lawsuits over allowing extra days for those ballots to arrive in the mail?
Well, I think the biggest difference between us and other states that have had trouble is that we depoliticized election administration in Kentucky. We depoliticized this office, and I went in with the governor and we worked out an agreement, and that gave us the ability to reassure both sides that this was fair and legitimate, and we didn't have the kind of litigation and gamesmanship that you've seen in other states this year.
And I know we're not even done with tonight yet, but in future elections, do you expect the same kind of access to voting for absentee ballots, more voting locations, and early voting?
I certainly would like to keep a lot of what we did this year. To be clear, all that we did was done through executive branch emergency powers that I was given, and those expire as they should when this pandemic is over. So by 2022, when we have another election, all that expires, but I will be asking the legislature to pass a lot of this stuff into law permanently.
Hey, one last question for you here. It seems like you're saying it's been very successful in the Commonwealth this year. Is there anything that you've learned, anything that you would do differently from the next election? What's your takeaway?
I'll tell you, the biggest thing I've learned, and I never fully appreciated, is how open-minded Kentuckians are, how willing they are to be assured by people in public office that we have to try something new and different. This is a conservative state, a traditional-minded state. Our election system was designed in the 1800s, has never been updated or re-examined. And then we came in June and we said, please vote absentee. And 75% of voters did. And then we said, please vote early. And almost all the voters did. So Kentuckians are very open-minded. They'll listen to information and they'll do the right thing. I've been really impressed at how well Kentuckians handled all this, including social distancing today at the polls. I'm really grateful for that.
Secretary of State Michael Adams, thank you so much for joining us
tonight.
Thank
you. My pleasure. Thanks.
Results on the presidential race keep rolling in. WDRB's Chad Mills gives us an update in about 3 minutes.
Plus, what is going on with the JCPS tax vote? Education reporter Sarah Syrie will help break down whether your vote on that issue counted.
From 20s to 75 degrees, when you might need the air conditioning. Next.
Across America, millions are keeping their eyes on who will become the next president of the United States. Here's a look at the results right now. President Trump has 98 electoral votes. Biden has 131. Chad Mills has been covering all night. Chad, what can you tell us?
Well, Fallon, no big swing states called at this point, but there has been some movement. Let's show you on the map right now. We told you just a couple minutes ago that Biden did have a lead in North Carolina that he was trying to cling onto. You can see as more of the vote came in, President Donald Trump has taken the lead there in North Carolina. Let's look and see 91% of the vote in there, a 1-point margin right now. So still a pretty tight race there in North Carolina as the remaining 9% of the vote comes in over the next little while. Ohio, I think we had told you that President Trump had taken the lead there the last time we joined you. You can see that continues with 80% of the vote now in there at Ohio, and he is up by 7 points there in the Buckeye State. But there's another state that we're getting more results from out west, and this is one that the Democrats would like to pick up, and it is looking pretty good if you're Joe Biden right now, and that is Arizona. Taking a look at Arizona, a large majority, or a pretty good majority, I would say 71% of the vote already in there in Arizona, and Joe Biden is leading by 9 points. So a bit of a bright spot there for Joe Biden out west. That is one of his paths to victory tonight. But if you're President Trump, you have to look at this map and see some pretty good red. And these states, Florida still leading there, North Carolina now leading there, Georgia still pretty early there, but he is maintaining his lead there, and some of these other states as well. We will continue to monitor and the road to 270 right here in Studio B.
WDRB weather is sponsored by Jarbo's Plumbing, Heating and Cooling.
We did start this morning off cool, and this is probably going to be the coldest morning we'll see in the next days. Carrollton 31 degrees. Look at Elizabethtown at 29 this morning with out there. 32 Brandenburg and 33 degrees in Lanesville. Saying goodbye to that as we start to bring in warmer, and there's a lot warmer in the next 7 days. Looking around the area right now, our skies are clear. There's a couple of clouds right now moving through Missouri. When you look at the wide perspective, you can see that's connected to an upper level low that's coming through the Midwest. So this one's near the Four Corners. Important because that's going to give us a puff of clouds on Thursday. To our south, this is Hurricane Eta. This is in Nicaragua. This is Honduras. And this is a slow-moving system, which is a real problem. Still 105-mile-an-hour sustained winds. The big issue on this one is there is going to be so much rain. This is mountainous terrain, and it is going to be a big story in the coming days. Interestingly, may re-emerge in the Caribbean and move towards the U.S. Of course it will this year. Looking at the skies today on the time lapse, just clear skies. Our temperature right now sitting at 52. We've got a southeast wind at 6 miles an hour. Cool in Bedford, Indiana at 46, 46 in Shelbyville. You are at 50 degrees in Litchfield and around the region. I mean, it's definitely warmer. It's not just Louisville at 7 degrees warmer over the last 24 hours. It's the region. So during the overnight hours, I'm not going to say it's not cool, but it's definitely not as cold as it was on Monday morning. Notice tomorrow we're still sunny. Remember, data's been underperforming, so I think we can do 70. Remember the clouds I showed you near the Four Corners out west? So we get those in here on Thursday, and by Friday they're gone, and data takes us to 68. Keeping in mind the data's been 4 to 5 degrees too cool, Your Friday's awesome. Tonight we're down to low 47 degrees, not quite as cold with a southwest wind at 3 to 5. Tomorrow afternoon is wonderful at 71 degrees. A little bit more breezy with a south-southwest wind at 10. I think we're going to touch 71 degrees on Friday. I think the weekend's warmer as we go to 74 degrees. There is a front in the next 7 days. Let's talk about when that shifts us cooler in 10 minutes.
All right, Mark, we'll check back with you soon. Thanks. Well, taking a look now at some of the issues Kentucky voters tackled on their ballots statewide. The first one, Marcy's Law, which voters overwhelmingly approve. Marcy's Law is described as kind of like a crime victims' bill of rights, helping those victims navigate the court process. Critics say it goes against the principle that all defendants are innocent until proven guilty. Kentucky voters already approved Marcy's Law when it was on the ballot back in 2018, but the state Supreme Court struck it down, finding the wording on the ballot back then too vague. Marcy's Law was one of 2 constitutional amendments that Kentucky voters decided on today.
And the other one has to do with extending terms for some judicial officials, and voters made their voices clear on this one. Take a look at the latest numbers with a resounding no, 69% and 31% voting yes. This would have been an amendment to Kentucky's Constitution. It would have increased the length of terms for certain judicial positions like Commonwealth attorneys and district court judges. It also would have required some judges to be licensed attorneys for at least 8 years before seeking election, but the race has been called and voters rejected it.
In Jefferson County, the JCPS tax hike remained on the ballot even though a judge threw out the issue days before the election.
As WDRB Sarah Sidery explains, taxes are going up either way. Sarah.
Votes on the tax weren't even counted tonight. The question now is how much taxes will go up. If you voted in person, you may have seen signs like these up at the ballot box. They say votes cast on the JCPS tax levy will not be tabulated or recorded. This comes after a judge tossed a challenge against the tax on Friday, ruling the No JCPS tax hike group did not get enough valid signatures against the 7-cent property tax increase. However, you will still notice a 4% tax hike on your property taxes on this month's bill. JCPS explains why.
That is the allowable tax that's not recallable. That will be on the property tax bills that are out right now. So in November of 21, the full amount that the board approved would be on that bill if everything plays out in court and Judge Edwards' decision and order is upheld.
If that's the case, I'm very pleased to hear that because that will help us in our appeal. We won't have to ask for a refund. We will just have to ask for that bill not to be sent. We definitely disagree with the decision for a number of reasons, and we're optimistic that we'll win on appeal.
And you heard there the opposition does plan to appeal, which means the ballots do have to be saved. If the ruling is struck down, then the votes get counted. If the ruling stands, then the rest of the tax increase will show up on next November's bill. Sarah Sidery, WDRB News.
Sarah, thank you. WDRB's election coverage continues. We'll have an update on the presidential race and how the U.S. Senate is shaping up.
We'll also break down the Indiana and Kentucky U.S. House races for you. And as we had to break, there were 2 JCPS school board races. Here's a look at those results.
For just $6. Papa John's.
Welcome back to WDRB News at 10. It is election 2020, and we're watching the big races locally throughout the state and nationally. In about 30 minutes, polls in 4 more states will close.
Right now, Trump has 98 electoral votes, while Biden has 131 electoral votes. Here's a look at where the results stand as of right now. President Donald Trump is at 50%. Joe Biden has 48% of the vote. Remember, though, electoral votes are what really matter for the presidential race. A candidate needs 270 electoral votes to win. Again, right now, Biden has 131 electoral votes. Trump has 98.
Switching over to the U.S. House, other than Democrat John Yarmuth in Kentucky, it was a Republican sweep.
WDRB's Chris Suter is helping us break down the races in each state. Chris.
Guys, this is fascinating to watch it happening all live, and we've been watching every single race across the states of Indiana and Kentucky. So let's start in Kentucky, District 1, okay? Real quickly, James Comer wins in that race. He is the incumbent, 75% to 24%. Let's move on now to District 2. That's Brett Guthrie, Hank Linderman. Those are the two big candidates in that race. As you can see here, Brett Guthrie winning the race by a significant margin. Now, this is the area that includes Bullitt and Hardin County, so I want to hone in on Bullitt County. You can see Guthrie here has 73% of the vote, pretty handedly wins the race in Bullitt County as well. Let's move on to District 3, shall we, as we keep this going. John Yarmouth, the clear winner. He was the incumbent, 62% to 37% in District 3. As we move on to District 4 in Kentucky, this includes Oldham County, Trimble County. This area of counties here goes all the way over to northern Kentucky and greater Cincinnati. Thomas Massey, as you can see, has won this race. And let's zoom into Oldham County here. You can see he won pretty handedly as well. Here, Massey with 63% of the vote. Owensby with 36% of the vote. I know what you're saying in Indiana. Let's get to some of the Indiana totals too, okay? So we're going to do that right now as we go to U.S. House District 6. The candidates here, you know them well. Republican Greg Pence, Janine Lake, the Democratic candidate. Pence takes the victory here, 68% to 27%. And let's hone in on the areas here that are in our viewing area. Jefferson County, of course, is where Madison is located. Greg Pence leads by 34% there. Part of Scott County also included here. And as you can see, Pence takes the win there with 71% of the vote. Real quickly, want to go to District 8 as well. This is an area that we just want to real quickly say that Larry Bouchon, the incumbent, has won here as well. District 9, this is the race that a lot of people in southern Indiana, Clarksville, Jefferson, New Albany, they've been watching all night. And this is one where we don't have a clear shot at who is the winner yet. It looks like Hollingsworth, the incumbent, is in the lead, 66% to 28% against Andy Ruff, the Democrat. As we hone in here to the very southernmost counties in Indiana, you can see in Clark County, 96% of precincts are reporting Hollingsworth is in the lead, 60% to 35%. So there you go. A real quick look at all of the numbers. We're here and we'll have the latest on the Indiana governor's race and how it all breaks down in just a couple of minutes. And you're going to talk a little bit more about that now too, Fallon.
That's right. Thank you, Chris. Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb wins re-election. Holcomb took down Democrat Woody Myers and Libertarian Donald Rainwater. Votes are still coming in, but Holcomb has 58% of the vote right now. Here's a bit more background on Holcomb. Eric Holcomb is the 51st governor of Indiana and was also the 51st lieutenant governor under now Vice President Mike Pence. He's a U.S. Navy veteran who was stationed here and overseas. And on a personal note, Holcomb collects presidential signatures and now has documents signed by every U.S. president. During his acceptance speech just a little earlier tonight, he talked about how he ran a positive campaign.
Well, let me just say this. What I'm even more proud of is around here in Indiana, we don't just dream big things, we do big things, and we aspire to be a positive influence all along the way.
And Holcomb ended his speech saying that in a year like 2020, he's grateful to be a Hoosier.
One of the more exceptional tropical seasons in recent memory. You could see this is Hurricane Eta. So Eta now is in Nicaragua. Eta has still 105-mile-an-hour sustained winds. For what it's worth, the biggest concern when you get a tropical system in this part of the world is if they go slow. Nicaragua and Honduras have high terrain, and if you get storms in that high terrain and it moves slowly, you can get unbelievable amounts of rain. And so you can see by Thursday morning, which is a day and a half, it's still in Honduras dumping rain. Here's where things get pretty interesting. Reemerges back into the Caribbean and heads towards Florida as a tropical storm. Is this real? This is indeed possible. Where the question marks come up will be is how well it can survive that heavy terrain. Something will likely develop in the Caribbean, whether it is the remnants or kind of a ghost of Eta or something different remains to be seen. But there's still a signal that shows whatever that is will be going towards the U.S. This from Mary Koshnud, just a cool sunrise picture this morning at Doe Valley Lake. And let me step out and just show you that shot. Terry Kelly sent this at downtown Louisville looking from the Indiana side. That is amazing. Terry Kelly sends in some incredible pictures, and that is an incredible view of our beautiful city. Looking around our area right now, we're pretty quiet. So today we made it to a high temperature of 67 degrees. Now remember, the data was about 63. I've been saying this for a couple months, but the computer models have been underperforming consistently. Keep in mind as we move forward. Right now we sit at 52 degrees. We've got a southeast wind at 6 miles per hour. So like last night, if there's a breeze, won't be as cool. 48 downtown Louisville, 52 St. Matthews, 44 in Austin, 43 in Elizabethtown, and looking around our region, there's not even a relic of that cold that started off the week. And it's not just us. I mean, how often can I say this? Billings, Montana, Denver, warmer than we are. Now the warmer bubble is starting to move in our direction, and you can see regionally the temperatures are really rising when you go east of the Rockies. I think this is part of our story. We're still going to continually see some temperature rises in the next few days. I think the one thing that's going to halt that a little bit, this little upper level low that's moving through New Mexico. So let's track how that moves across our area. It's not here tonight. And tomorrow you'll notice there's a little hint of those clouds in Illinois, but look around our area. I mean, you have virtually no clouds. Remember, data's been underperforming, so I think we can go to 70 tomorrow. Thursday, you'll notice with this little area moving across the area, maybe a couple degrees cooler. Maybe it's 68 to 70 versus 70 or 71. You'll notice as we go towards Friday, we're looking at skies that are mostly sunny. You'll notice on Saturday, we remain in that scenario as we go above 70 degrees. And you can see as we look towards Sunday, we're at 75 degrees. So here's the next front. This one's going to get in here Tuesday into Wednesday. Data's still a little bit uncertain on which day. Regardless, I think it's our best chance of rain probably in the next 7 to 10 days when that front comes through, cooling us down. 47 degrees tonight. We're not quite as cold out there. Tomorrow afternoon is simply stunning. 71 degrees, perfectly sunny skies. We're partly cloudy on Thursday. Love Friday at 71. The weekend for November is off the chart. 72 Saturday, 74 Sunday. Tuesday into Wednesday, we will see a front, and that's when our rain chance is finally going to start to nudge back up.
Mark Weinberg, all 7 days in your 7-day with a high in the 70s in November. I consider that like a personal gift, my friend. Thank you very much. All right, Louisville health leaders are warning. So many COVID-19 cases, the county's hospitals could get overwhelmed. Health Department reports positive cases linked to schools, daycares, the grocery store, and restaurants. We are told that hospitalizations more than tripled from this time last month, and that number is expected to rise exponentially.
We are starting to be more aggressive now. Our hospitals are going to be over capacity in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. We have so much COVID in our community that the regular risk reduction measures like wearing a mask, washing your hands, staying 6 feet apart are not enough to curb the spread alone.
Health leaders are now asking the community to cancel any events or gatherings and encouraging businesses to let employees work from home.
Coronavirus cases surge in Kentucky, and Governor Andy Beshear says more people have to buy in and comply with guidelines.
I know people are focused on the elections today. When you wake up tomorrow, I hope you realize that no matter who wins or who loses, we are still at war with this virus, and we're going to need your effort no matter the outcome.
The state reported nearly 1,800 new cases in Kentucky. That includes more than 250 kids under the age of 18. This is the 6th highest reported day overall for the state and brings the positivity rate to 6.24%. Beshear also says hospitalizations are increasing and said people need to be cautious about gathering with family and friends. Another day of high coronavirus cases in the Hoosier state. The state reported more than 2,900 new cases today. That brings the total to more than 188,000 Hoosiers who have been infected. Nearly 4,200 people have died from COVID-19. So far, more than 1,700,000 Hoosiers have been tested.
Norton Healthcare and Baptist Health Lexington will take part in a COVID-19 vaccine trial. Norton says the phase 3 ensemble clinical trial is from Janssen Vaccines and Prevention. It is being led by the University of Kentucky Center for Clinical and Transitional Science. The goal is to recruit at least 2,000 adult volunteers.
A big night for election 2020. Results keep pouring in for the presidential race.
We're going to take another look at what's happening across the country. Plus, how was your voting experience today? We head over to the Hoosier State to see if there were any problems there. We'll be right back. All eyes are on the race for the White House. You can see the numbers continuing to come in. Joe Biden right now leading President Trump 131 electoral votes to 108. WDRB's Chad Mills is keeping an eye on this big race. Chad, what are you seeing on the big map throughout the country?
Gil, leading up to today, some of the polls suggested that southeast states might be in play for the Democrats, but that hasn't panned out so far tonight. Florida still too close to call, but Donald Trump building his narrow lead there. Georgia, there's still plenty of votes from the Atlanta area that haven't been counted, but Trump has a pretty comfortable lead right now. And North Carolina, once Biden enjoyed a lead there earlier tonight, now has gone red. Donald Trump holding on to a lead there. Texas isn't blue, at least not for now. Donald Trump leading there as well. That leaves a couple of states, and we'll start again with Arizona, which you see is lit up blue right now, which means that Biden is ahead. Let's check just what the total is right now. The race for the 11 electoral votes there. You can see Biden leading with 73% of the vote in, up by 9 points. A pretty comfortable lead for Biden right there. There are a couple other states that his campaign likely watching pretty closely right now. One of them is Minnesota, which is lit up that blue shade. 43% of the vote in there, and Biden is ahead, let's see, by 21 points. So a pretty commanding lead there in Minnesota. Donald Trump leading two other states that Biden would like to win. We'll start with Wisconsin, where 52% of the vote in. Donald Trump up by 4 points there. And then there's Michigan, Donald Trump leading by 12 points with 39% of the vote in there. Still some room, and it looks like some of the urban areas still have some votes to be counted. And then, of course, there's Pennsylvania, which has been talked about as this make or break state, potentially for the president's campaign and potentially for Joe Biden's campaign. Looking at the results there so far, 40% of the votes are in. President Trump leading there again by 12 points. Now, looking at a more detailed map of Pennsylvania, it looks like a lot of the ballots from Philadelphia area will be counted at some point, maybe not even tonight, maybe over the next couple of days. Obviously, that will have a big influence over the state. Pittsburgh, on the other side of the state, just a small percentage of votes in from that county as well. But President Trump seems to be doing well in the more rural area, the more Republican area, in between the urban areas of Pennsylvania. So that is how the map is shaping up right now. We haven't had any of those battleground states called for President Trump or for Biden at this point, but we are going to stand by, keep looking at things as votes are counted across the nation. Guys.
And still a lot of states to get to. Chad, thank you. Indiana has elected a new attorney general. Republican Todd Rokita beat out Democrat Jonathan Weinzapfel. Current Attorney General Curtis Hill was beat in the primary by Rokita. It was announced today that Rokita tested positive for COVID-19 after developing some symptoms. His campaign says he's doing well and working from home.
Polling locations in southern Indiana saw a steady stream of voters today.
WDRB's Kristen Shanahan shares what they had to say about their experience during this unprecedented year. Kristen.
Gillen Fallon, voters we spoke with say the process was easy and they were in and out of the doors within minutes. We checked in with a couple of locations at the 4-H Fairgrounds in Clark County. We're told more than 2,200 people voted in person on Election Day, and at the New Albany High School, an inspector said over 1,100 people voted at that location. We were there when polls closed and caught up with last-minute in-person voters who shared their reasons for waiting until Election Day to cast their ballot.
I'm a little bit of a procrastinator, but I just prefer to come out and do it in person, you know, and I guess I'm just old school.
Because I knew it was me voting. I didn't want to rely on the mail to get there, and I've wrote letters before that didn't show up.
Although voters said their experience was smooth, they said it was different voting while wearing a mask and social distancing from others. And we're told that there are still counting votes in Floyd County. We hope to have more on that at 11. Reporting live, Kristen Shanahan, WDRB News.
Kristen, thank you. The Breckinridge County Sheriff's Office will hold steady. Billy Richardson beat Bruce Anthony tonight with 54% of the vote. He's a familiar face in that county because he's already on the job. Richardson took over for former sheriff and political rival Todd Pate back in March. Richardson was a deputy in Breckinridge County when he was fired when he ran against Pate back in 2018. But Pate retired in February of this year after being arrested twice for driving under the influence. Pate later pleaded guilty and had to serve about a month in jail.
Clark County Judge Andrew Adams lost his re-election bid. The Democrat lost to Republican Dan Moore in tonight's election. Moore grabbed 56% of the vote, while Adams only got 44%. You may remember Adams was one of the judges who was shot outside a White Castle in Indy. It happened in May of last year. Adams and another Clark County judge, Brad Jacobs, got into a fight with two other men. Both Adams and Jacobs were shot. Jacobs didn't face any charges, but Adams pleaded guilty to a battery charge. The two other men were also charged with battery. Jacobs ran unopposed in today's election.
And a big shakeup for an Indiana House seat with 98% of the vote reporting. It looks like Zach Payne has unseated Terry Gooden. That's going to switch from a Democrat to a Republican seat. Gooden, that was representing the 66th district, that's Scott and Jefferson counties. Gooden has held that seat for 2 decades. He was first elected in 2000. Big shakeup in southern Indiana.
That's right. Well, a Kentucky 8-year-old is recognized for her bravery.
What her mom says she did that may have saved her life. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says there is work to do with the Kentucky State Police after slides quoting Adolf Hitler were used in training materials.
I want the public to know that I've heard from so many active and former KSP troopers who, to a person, say that this training is not who they are, is not who the state police is.
It's an honor.
KSP Commissioner Rodney Brewer will resign tomorrow after the controversial material surfaced. It quoted Hitler and also advocated for ruthless violence. The training materials were removed back in 2013 during Brewer's first stint as commissioner. Governor Beshear did not say if he asked for Brewer's resignation. An acting commissioner will take over, but Beshear says there will be a broader search for a permanent replacement. There is help available for people who can't afford heat and water. Louisville is taking appointments for its low-income home energy assistance program, or LIHEAP. Jefferson County residents need proof of household income and a current heating bill. You can make appointments by calling the number on your screen. They can be made online as well. The program gives you a one-time payment for your utility company. Appointments are also being accepted for the new Healthy at Home Utility Assistance Fund to help with gas, water, and electric bills.
An 8-year-old little girl from Kentucky received an award for saving her mother's life. Addie Kramer was trained by her dad on what to do if there was ever an emergency. Addie's mother has fought breast cancer and recently had a seizure. Addie responded quickly and was ready to help out her mom.
She put a pillow under my head, made sure that I was on my side, just went through the right steps as an 8-year-old. That's very huge.
Addie got in touch with her dad, who was out at the time, but then Dad got in touch with the fire department to help. She was later given an award for her actions at a city council meeting. The fire department also gave Addie a certificate of bravery. That's a good place to leave you for tonight. We've got lots more election coverage on the way. Fallon and Scott kick off WDRB News at 11 right now.
An election day unlike any other, and you can see the latest results right at the bottom of the screen. Some razor-thin margins out there in some states. We want to get to the biggest race. Who will be the next president of the United States?
270 electoral votes is all it takes. WDRB's Chad Mills shows us who is already in the lead. Chad.
And guys, let's start with the electoral votes themselves. You can see President Donald Trump has 108. His challenger, Joe Biden, has 135. Biden clinging to that total right now as the president is having some success in the southern United States, areas where Democrats thought they might be able to turn some states blue. But that hasn't been the case so far. But many of these races still too close to call. Let's start with some of them, and let's start with Florida. Right now, I think there's 97% of the vote in. Donald Trump has built a pretty comfortable lead for the state of Florida, 4 points there without much vote to count at that point. Georgia, 65% of the vote in there. Donald Trump leading by 9 points. And then there's North Carolina, which was blue for a couple hours this evening as votes just started to come in. Now with 93% of the vote in, Donald Trump leading by 1 point. Still a pretty narrow race where they're kind of working out some of the numbers, some of the polling there to some of the issues that may have come up during the day to figure out what the tally is there. Let's move to Texas, a state that Democrats thought they might be competitive in. That hasn't been the case so far. Donald Trump leading by 4 points with 73% of the vote in. Let's go out west to Arizona while we're out here. This is an area where Joe Biden is having some success, thanks in part to Maricopa County, where Phoenix is, bringing out new voters as demographics shift there. With electoral votes, 11 electoral votes available there in Arizona. Joe Biden leading by 9 points with 73% of the vote in. So with the South kind of glowing red right now, these races that are in the lighter shade of red still too close to call, that means that Joe Biden and the Democrats' attention is focused elsewhere, mainly on Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Let's start with Wisconsin right there. It looks like more vote has come in since last time, 56%, Trump leading by 5 points. That could tighten a little bit as we go on. Then there's Michigan. President Trump leading there too with 42% of the vote in by 11 points. But as we've mentioned, some of the more urban areas, they're waiting for some votes from there. President Trump doing pretty well in Ohio, even despite Joe Biden's early lead there. That, of course, leaves Pennsylvania, which many have predicted might be kind of the bellwether of the whole election, might decide it one way or the other. Let's look and see 44% of the vote in now from Pennsylvania, with President Trump leading there by some percentage points. Again, as we pointed out before, there are some urban areas, mainly Philadelphia, Pittsburgh as well, where they're waiting for a number of votes to be counted. Pennsylvania might take a little while for some of these votes to be counted. It could be days, could be by the end of the week for some of the precincts. So that is something to keep in mind as a lot of the nation's attention now turns to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Arizona. That is how the map is shaping up right now. Obviously, you see the bolder states, they've been called either for President Trump or Joe Biden. No big surprises yet, except that the polls, yet again, may not have been as favorable to the Democrats as originally thought, or at least the race, the election is tighter than some may have thought it might be going up to today. We will continue to monitor the electoral map here in Studio B as we send things back to A.
Thanks, Chad. Kentucky is keeping its front row seat in the U.S. Senate. That's the declaration from Majority Leader Mitch McConnell tonight, who had a decisive victory over Democrat Amy McGrath and Libertarian Brad Barron. WDRB's Lawrence Smith is live to tell us what else McConnell had to say about his big win tonight. Lawrence.
Scott McConnell giving a short victory speech here at the Omni Hotel, accompanied by his wife, U.S. Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao. McConnell says there's no big celebration planned here because of COVID-19, just a few staff here and media. The senator congratulating Amy McGrath and saying he's grateful and humble to be returning to Washington for a 7th straight term. And he says it's obvious that Kentuckians value his influence in Washington, D.C.
Well, a lot comes to mind, not like tonight. So tonight, Kentucky said we're keeping our front row seat in the Senate. We don't yet know which presidential candidate will begin a new term in January. We don't know which party will control the Senate. But some things are certain already. We know grave challenges will remain before us, challenges that could not care less about our political polarization. We know our next president will need to unite the country, even as we all continue to bring different ideas and commitments to the table. But we also know, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that our nation, our people, can do this.
As you heard McConnell say, he does not know yet whether he'll be majority or minority leader, and he doesn't know what president he'll be dealing with, but he says regardless, Kentucky will have a seat at the table. In downtown Louisville, Lawrence Smith, WDRB News.
Lawrence, thank you. Eric Holcomb wins another term in Indiana's top office. This was one of the first races called, with incumbent Holcomb quickly beating Democrat Woody Myers and Libertarian Donald Rainwater. WDRB's Chris Suter is standing by to break down how he voted. Chris.
Well, Fallon, let's start up north, shall we? This is a blue stronghold right here. This is Lake County, where Woody Myers leads by 8 points in the election. You can see that there are several other metropolitan areas where they also have gone blue at this hour. Woody Myers leads by 12 points in Marion County, which is where Indianapolis is. Evansville also with 5% of precincts reporting Woody Myers leads there. Now let's focus a little bit more on our area and the way people who watch this TV station voted. As you zoom into Harrison County, you can see that Eric Holcomb won 69% to 22%. Most of the precincts reporting there, Holcomb taking the lead pretty handedly. And let's go to some of the other counties too. Clark County, that's a good one. 96% of precincts reporting there. The incumbent Eric Holcomb, 60% of the vote. Myers with 33% of the vote. Donald Rainwater with 6.4% of the vote. So you get the idea here. This was a pretty big win for Eric Holcomb in a lot of ways. His victory speech not all that long ago. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, even and especially in a year like 2020, ain't it good to be a Hoosier? Hope and growth and opportunity are alive and well in our state.
I'll absolutely voices such as mine.
Well, Holcomb says he thanked his opponent Woody Myers as well. They shared a phone call just after the race was called in favor of Holcomb. It's worth mentioning, too, the last time a Democrat was in the governor's mansion was just before the 2004 election. Joe Kernan was the last Democratic governor in the state of Indiana, and he, of course, took over for Governor Frank O'Bannon, who unexpectedly died. Scott, over to you.
Thanks so much, Chris. Another big race in Indiana. Who will be the state's next attorney general? Republican Todd Rokita beating out Democrat Jonathan Weinzapfel. The former U.S. House representative has now, as you can see, our latest totals, about 62% of the vote. A big lead of about 478,000 right now. Votes still coming in. Right now, Rokita is positive, by the way, for COVID-19. He says while he does have symptoms, his team says he's doing well working from home. Rokita replacing fellow Republican Curtis Hill, who lost the primary after he was involved in a groping scandal.
Well, Kentucky counties are reporting things went as well as they could have, considering the changes this year with COVID-19.
WDRB's Joel Skipper joins us live from Jefferson County with a look at how things went tonight. Joel?
Scott and Fallon, from Nelson County to Meade County, no problems and no lines. Polls opened at 6 a.m. They closed at 6 p.m. No issues to report. Clerks and election supervisors tell me really no major lines, but there was a continuous flow of people. In Jefferson County, the average wait time into a location and out, less than 10 minutes. Everyone inside had the masks on and the stations were constantly disinfected. Since there were fewer polling places this year, there were more ballot machines to eliminate any major technical issues. Attorney General Daniel Cameron said there were more than 80 complaints to the election fraud hotline, mostly about names being misspelled or people not having the correct ID. That's compared to 284 complaints just 4 years ago in 2016. And we do want to remind you that we have you completely covered on all of our social media pages when it comes to the election, and of course at our website at WDRB.com. Live in downtown Louisville, Joel Skipper, WDRB News.
Thanks, Joel. Votes for that JCPS tax increase were not even counted tonight after a judge ruled the question never belonged on the ballot.
But as WDRB's Sarah Sidery explains, it's not a done deal just yet.
Yeah, those ballots have to be saved because the decision is being appealed. This comes after a judge tossed the challenge against the tax on Friday, ruling the no JCPS tax hike group did not get enough valid signatures against the 7-cent property tax increase. The group has 30 days to appeal, which they plan to do. If you voted in person, you may have seen signs that were up at the ballot box. They say votes cast on the JCPS tax levy will not be tabulated or recorded. You see them right there. However, you'll still notice a 4% hike in property taxes on this month's bill. By law, that's how much the board can raise taxes without a recall. If the ruling stands, then JCPS says the full amount would take effect next November. And still no final answers tonight, all depending on what happens in court. Sarah Sidery, WDRB News.
All right, Sarah, thank you. Kentucky voters decided on whether to add 2 amendments to the state's constitution. First was Marcy's Law. It was passed with 63% of the vote. The change aims to help crime victims throughout the court process, while critics argue it goes against the principle that all defendants are innocent until proven guilty. Kentucky voters actually approved Marcy's Law back in 2018, but the state Supreme Court struck it down because of vague wording. The other amendment voters took on was one that would extend terms for some elected officials. Voters decided to reject it by a wide margin. The issue was whether to give judicial offices like Commonwealth's attorneys and district court judges longer terms. It also would have made sure judges are licensed attorneys for at least 8 years before running for a spot on the bench. And we have plenty of other races to get to on this election night.
Yeah, we're going to give you the latest on those congressional races in Kentucky and Indiana.
And as we head to break, here's a look at the winners in Louisville's Metro Council races.
Democrat John Yarmouth headed back to Washington, D.C. for another term. Yarmouth won re-election over Republican challenger Rhonda Palazzo by a margin of about 62 to 38%. This will be Yarmouth's 7th term in the U.S. House of Representatives for Kentucky's 3rd district, which includes a lot of Metro Louisville. It's a heavily Democratic district. Some background on the congressman: he was born and raised in Louisville, graduated from Atherton High School, then Yale University, elected to Congress in 2006, and now serves as the House Budget Committee chair.
And taking a look now at another race in the U.S. House, this one in Kentucky's 1st district, which covers the southwestern part of the state. The incumbent takes this race as well, with Republican James Comer beating out Democrat James Rhodes. As you can see here, Comer won 75% of the vote. And Republican Brett Guthrie is also returning to D.C. Here's a look at the race for the U.S. House in Kentucky's 2nd district. It covers Bullitt, Hardin, Meade, Nelson, and Spencer counties in our area. As you can see, Guthrie beat out 4 other candidates tonight with 72% of the vote. Guthrie was first elected to the U.S. House in 2008 and will now serve a 7th term. He graduated from West Point and served in the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, before getting his master's degree at Yale. Before being elected to the U.S. House, he was a Kentucky state senator for 10 years.
And now checking on Kentucky's 4th district. This runs from far eastern Jefferson County, pretty much along Interstate 71, all the way up close to Cincinnati. And the incumbent is the winner here again as well, Republican Thomas Massie, in a heavily GOP district, beating Democrat Alexandra Owensby tonight. Massie first elected to the U.S. House in 2012 to represent the area that does cover those areas I told you about, all the way going up into northern Kentucky.
And let's cross the river to Indiana to get a look at how the U.S. House races are shaping up there. In the 6th district, Vice President Mike Pence's brother won re-election. Republican Greg Pence beat out Democrat Jeanine Lake with 69% of the vote. Pence was first elected in 2018 after former Representative Luke Messer vacated the seat to run for Senate.
And the red wave continues in Indiana's 8th district. Republican Larry Bouchon also winning re-election. He beat out Democrat Thomasina Marsili. The 8th district makes up all or part of 19 counties in southwestern Indiana, including Crawford County in our viewing area. And taking a look now at Indiana's 9th congressional district, which covers many counties in our viewing area: Clark, Floyd, Harrison, Crawford, and some more. Incumbent Republican Trey Hollingsworth defeating Democrat Andy Ruff 67 to 28%. This is the 2nd term for Hollingsworth. And he's a businessman who started actually an aluminum remanufacturing operation in Indiana. His wife Kelly and their 3-year-old son Liv in Jeffersonville.
WDRB weather is sponsored by Jarbo's Plumbing, Heating and Cooling.
If you keep procrastinating, so I'll get the car washed tomorrow, but it just keeps taking day after day, don't wait any longer, simply because you're going to get so much mileage out of that wash with no rain expected over the next 3 days. Wednesday, it's warm, around 71. Some extra clouds do block out sun on Thursday, which will keep highs in the upper 60s to around 70. And then Friday, back out to full out sunshine with temperatures hovering in the lower 70s. And that is not the only 3 days we have in the 70s lined up over the next 7. We'll talk more about that in a second. For now, I want to give you a quick update on Hurricane Eta. It is a Category 2 storm, has weakened over land in Nicaragua, which is very mountainous and hilly. And that's going to produce some winds of 105 miles an hour. Pressure 970, moving west at 6 miles an hour. This slow movement is what makes this thing so dangerous, because it's just going to unleash relentless amounts of rain over the next several days, weakening to a tropical storm, then a depression, re-emerging in the Caribbean, and then making a run at Cuba as a tropical storm could cross over Cuba and potentially have impacts in South Florida or along the Gulf Coast as we approach early next week. Still a lot of uncertainty with that one, but something we'll keep an eye on in the days to come. Outside, skies just crystal clear. You can see just each and every star overhead. With clear skies, it'll be chilly out there tonight. Notice I didn't say cold. We'll call it chilly with temperatures in the 40s, so chances are you won't have to wake up early and scrape the windshield off with your ice scraper tomorrow morning. And it looks like every single day over the next consistent, with low temperatures ending up in the 50s and highs in the 70s. That's just after tomorrow. Today's high, 67, average around 64, which means we were slightly above normal, and then we climb above normal through the rest of the week and stay put. Outside now, we're close to 50. Your dew point's 38. Southeast wind around 6 miles an hour. So that south wind helping to keep these numbers up a little bit, as opposed to getting quite as cold, with numbers widespread in the 30s for all of Kentucky, and maybe a couple spots in the 30s, but most will chill out into the 40s. It's 47 in Nashville, 60 in St. Louis. Kansas City, a mild 62, and look at all of this warmth. We are not alone. Much of the region enjoying temperatures which are warmer than they were 24 hours ago. We'll add on to that map tomorrow, and then eventually those numbers level off. Going through advanced track, it's chilly tonight, clear skies, and that south wind. Temperatures hanging out in the low to mid 40s first thing tomorrow morning. By the afternoon, full sunshine and a nice warm day with highs making it into the 70s, and this is day one of many. Now Thursday there will be some extra clouds, and that's going to block out some sunshine every once in a while. Call it partly cloudy for the balance of the day. Highs around 70. Friday a chilly start. A nice warm afternoon with numbers in the upper 60s and lower 70s. Saturday looks very similar, although a couple more clouds do start to dot the sky. Next rain chance doesn't hit until Tuesday of next week, and does mean a very prolonged time with no rain and warm temperatures. So really, the nice 7-day forecast I have seen basically in my entire life. No exaggeration there. Not as cold, chilly tonight. We're down to 47 degrees for overnight low temperature. Tomorrow it is sunny and warm, a high rate around 71 degrees. And then we're going to climb back into the 70s again on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Stays very nice, lows in the 50s, dry on Monday, and then Tuesday into Wednesday, watching a cold front. It could bring the chance for some showers and thunderstorms, and also an end to this very warm stretch of weather.
But 7 days of 70s, I will take it. Rick, thank you. Well, right now, the only thing President Trump and his challenger, Joe Biden, can do is wait.
We're going to have a great night. And we're going to have, much more importantly, we're going to have a great 4 years.
Turnout's been incredible. The job you're doing is incredible. I really mean it. I really mean it. I can't thank you enough.
The president is spending the evening in the East Wing of the White House with senior staffers and family members by his side. Biden is in his hometown of Wilmington, Delaware, after several stops in Pennsylvania today.
It's going to be a long day tomorrow, too, I think.
It will be a long night, long day.
They even stopped counting absentee ballots in Pennsylvania because they know they've got so much work to do. We'll bring you more election coverage coming up soon.
As we take one last look at the biggest race of the night, the race for the presidency of the United States. Votes are still rolling in across the country in the race for the White House.
So let's get to WDRB's Chad Mills for his final check on the 2020 presidential election. What's the latest, Chad?
Well, let's start with Iowa. We do have some results from Iowa now. Joe Biden was leading there now, but you can see that little pinkish reddish hue. That means that Donald Trump is leading there, and he is leading by a very small fraction, 0.1 point, with 73% of the vote in. But by all accounts, a lot of the nation's focus right now on 4 states. We'll go through them real quick. Again, Arizona, which you see in that light blue shade, meaning that Joe Biden is leading in Arizona. And it looks like he's leading by 9 points with 73% of the vote in. That is a bright spot for Joe Biden right now. That is a state that Trump won in 2016. So that would be a flip if that holds. Then there's the Midwest, the Rust Belt, as it's known. Let's start with Wisconsin. Has a lead with 62% of the vote in. He's leading by 5 points right now. That could tighten. We expect it will as the night goes on, but Trump having the lead there in Wisconsin right now. Let's go east to Michigan. Let me shift the map over so we can get a good look at it. Trump, with 47% of the vote in, is leading by, 11 points there in Michigan. These are states that he won back in 2016, states the Democrats thought they could turn back blue, appealing to the working man in those states, hoping that they would become Democratic again. So far, though, President Trump holding on to a lead in those states as they await more votes to be counted. And then there is Pennsylvania, which you'll probably hear a lot about over the next day, maybe couple of days. Pennsylvania going for Trump right now with 49% of the vote in. The president leading there by 13 points. But let me underscore, we understand there are plenty of votes, hundreds of thousands of votes, some in Philadelphia, some in Pittsburgh, those urban areas that remain to be counted. They obviously weren't used to having so many paper ballots sent in via absentee that they will have to count. They didn't start counting them, in fact, in the morning. They plan to work through the night counting those ballots. But this is the rest of the map, and let's go over some of these states. Obviously, in many polls, Biden was leading in Florida. He was competitive in Georgia. He was leading North Carolina. These states have not been called, especially Georgia. A lot of vote has to be counted there from the urban area of Atlanta. But it looks like Trump is holding on to a pretty decent lead in the Sunshine State, holding on to a pretty decent lead in North Carolina as well. Not too much vote to count there in those 2 states. And then there's Ohio, where Biden was leading a little earlier tonight. President Trump now with a comfortable lead there with about 7% of the vote to count. We will continue to monitor this map overnight along with the rest of the nation. We will send things back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Chad, thank you. And they need 270 votes to win this election. Trump right now has 118 electoral votes. Biden has 209.
And Mitch McConnell watching to see what happens with the Senate. Tillis holding on in North Carolina. They picked up a seat in Alabama, but they've lost in Colorado. They could lose in Arizona and a couple other states. It will be razor thin. And that's it for the news here tonight at 11.
Have a great night, everyone.